Know thy enemy. Here's the Miami Hurricanes' biggest weakness and how the Florida Gators can and will attack it on August 31st.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free waves in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Wednesday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. On my written work with Giants Country. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And, well, we've got to talk about something with the Miami Hurricanes, and I know you sensitive bunch got so upset yesterday. Your secondary sucks. Sorry. Miami Hurricanes are replacing 4 of their 5 starters in the secondary. I think Daryl Porter Jr. is a good football player. Okay? Now, I'm not going to say a single negative thing about him, right? I think he's a future NFL cornerback. Nothing to even say about him, right? He's not the guy that – he's a very strong link in a weak chain. We'll say that about the Miami Hurricanes secondary for 2024. Go ahead with your predictable what you're upset about. Go ahead. I told you guys yesterday. I said, I'm going to say this about the Miami Hurricanes. Their fans are going to go take shots at how I look. And I get it. If you can't hang and talk ball, if you're not good enough, that's fine. That's fine. Just know. But I know and you know, and that's what matters. Daryl Porter Jr., good football player, not going to take a shot at him at all. Mish Powell from Washington transferred in this past offseason. I think he's decent. I like what he can do in coverage. I do think that Florida should test him. We'll talk about that later. I like what he can do in coverage. However, throughout his entire career, he's struggled with missing tackles. We'll see how you improve there. I do think that that's something where, I've said it about Florida brought in DJ Douglas from Tulane this year. And I said, hey, he's struggled quite a bit with missed tackles. I'm not too sure that that's going to get better now at the Power 5 level coming over from Tulane. Of course, Mish Powell played at the Power 4 level as it was, but he still struggled there. Has some experience playing outside. Considerably better in the slot. He belongs in the slot. He's got good size, too. He's listed as 6'1", at least. So good size, good length. Like what he can do in coverage again, but I do think that he should be tested. I think he will be tested. And honestly, I'm running the ball in his general direction and seeing if he can tackle running backs like that. Damari Brown was a rotational corner last year. And again, this is, things can change. There's no official depth chart out yet. Although, again, we have the general expectation for who's going to be starting in the secondary here. Damari Brown was rotational last year and was bad at it for the Miami Hurricanes. And so looking at him step up this year, are you going to be able to handle are you going to be better in a bigger role? Is that what we're trying to talk about here? Again, good size for him. If I'm Miami, I'm putting him on Elijah Badger or Khalil Jackson, whoever's out there. We'll talk about that later again as well. But Daryl Porter Jr. last year, not awesome. A few starts for him, but for the most part was a rotational player throughout the year. Inexperienced relatively, plenty of time to improve there. But you got to improve in week 1. That's an important part there as well. Maybe year 2 in this defensive system will help him. I'm not trashing him as a player at all. Again, good size. Can you get better with more experience? We'll see. Jaden Harris, nobody. And by that, I don't mean like he's an irrelevant individual. I mean that Jaden Harris simply didn't play enough for me to have a real opinion of how he would translate to a larger sample size. 12 to 15 snaps per game is hard to allow me to go, yeah, I think I know what he'll be on a larger sample size. So I think that's a relative unknown, which, hey, could be good, could not be good for Miami, could be good for Florida. We'll see about that, really. It's just one of those situations where you look at him and you go, well, no clue what he's going to be. No clue what he's going to be long-term. He moved around a lot in the secondary, so he's versatile. If you can play a lot of spots but can't play them well, does it matter? Because that's what he was last year. He was versatile. He moved around when he played. I don't think he necessarily excelled at anything, but again, such a small sample size there, especially when you consider that he was moving around and a rotational player. It's like, well, hard to properly evaluate what he can be on a larger sample size. What we can say is that this is going to be his first season that he's entering the season as a starter. This is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, this is his first start against a Power 4 opponent. I think he started last year. Might have been Bethune-Cookman or Temple. It was one of the smaller schools. Obviously, those are not the same level caliber programs as each other. But I believe this will be his first Power 4 start, which would be interesting. And Isaiah Taylor, another guy that's expected to start or contribute significantly, will say, I don't know about him, because and if you're new here, then you're new here, right? You don't really know the usual operation or the usual assumption that I make or the usual opinions that I have of things, and you don't have to, right? However, I have a general rule of thumb that when you're looking in the transfer portal, you want to add, there's two types of good additions, right? There's guys who were starters at their previous spot and are looking for a new challenge, more NIL, whatever it is. Guys that are looking for a new location to play at, looking for a new spot to play at, whatever the reason. Again, I don't necessarily care about that. And players who have been in college for less than one full season or less, and I look at them as extensions of the recruiting class. So I would evaluate them like that. Like if a guy comes in after a redshirt freshman year, he comes in and I look at him as, well, he's basically a freshman for this. What's that look like? Isaiah Taylor was a backup at Arizona, was at Arizona for more than one season. So therefore, he does not meet that requirement. Bad transfer portal pickup. No other. Again, you could disagree. Again, that's just my general standing. I've said that about Florida Gators players. I'll say that about other players. There's two types of good portal additions, in my opinion. He's not one of them, plain and simple. There's a lot of guys, though, that you need to go, can you prove yourself? Mish Powell, he played Power 4 football as a starter. He was pretty good there. But now you're doing it with a new defensive system. Even if it's similar, you're doing it at a new place. You need to come and improve it with new secondary where you're not as experienced in working with them. So, I think that there's a lot of guys that are prove it. Maybe Isaiah Taylor's good. As it stands, though, not a good portal addition. Maybe Damari Brown's good. Last year, he wasn't. Maybe Jaden Harris is good. Last year, he didn't play. So it's hard to really evaluate them. Darryl Porter Jr., though, good football player. Now you need to make that secondary prove themselves and attack that secondary. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It can get a little tiresome, right? It's a little tedious at certain points. I will say, GameTime, fantastic. I just bought more tickets for GameTime. This time a little bit more in advance, going to a concert late in October, Swaco, if you care to hear that. All-in pricing, one of their best features. First off, you have to turn all-in pricing on, but you see the entire cost up front. No surprise fees at checkout, none of that. Just click all in pricing and you see everything. So you're not like, oh yeah, I don't know, $180 isn't bad. And then you go to check out and it's $270 and it's like, what the hell just happened? You don't have to worry about that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Heck, Miami fans yesterday. I said on this show that the Florida Gators will beat the Miami Hurricanes. I've said that, yeah. I said that, and I stand on it. Miami Hurricanes fan on Twitter was like, let's see his bet slip to see if he's really bad. I posted it May 31st, 2024 at 10-something in the morning. That's when I placed my bet. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. And so I said the Miami Hurricanes secondary is their weak point. The Florida Gators need to attack that. Okay, we'll talk about how to attack that secondary later on. But I want to get ahead of this. Again, I feel like I've been very active with Miami fans on Twitter and Twitter Spaces. You catch me a lot in there. And I've been very active with them. I feel like I've got a good pulse of their fan base, okay? So when I say that the secondary is the weak spot, the Miami Hurricanes fans are going to go, okay, fine. You could say that. However, you can't attack this secondary with our pass rush. I get it. Miami is expecting to have a very good pass rush. And this isn't me saying that they're going to be bad. This is me saying there's a lot of new pieces moving around. I'm not going to definitively say, hey, they're going to be good at it. I do that with Florida Gators players too. I say, hey, you got better on paper. Let's see it in practice. So, yeah, let's see it in practice with the pass rush. But just the hypothetical game, let's play it. How do you stop that pass rush? I don't know if you watched the NFL. Maybe you saw the clip last year where I forgot who it was. Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they were facing the Cleveland Browns, who have Myles Garrett, who is one-man wrecking crew, just complete beast, right? And there's a clip where there's a tight end who lines up on the same side as Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett goes to the other side of the offensive line, or facing the other side of the offensive line, and the tight end follows him. And Myles Garrett goes to the other side again, and the tight end follows him again. And it's very clear at this point that, hey, that tight end's job is find Myles Garrett, block him, like double team him, right? If I'm the Florida Gators, I'm doing that with Hayden Hansen. Simple as that. I think Ruben Bain's a really good pass rusher. I don't know if he's a game wrecker, game breaker type. I don't know if he's that yet. But I think he's a really good pass rusher. He is. He's proven, right? You look at the pass rush production from last year. You look at the film. Any metric you want, any clip you want. Ruben Bain's a good pass rusher. Okay? I'm not saying game wrecker, game breaker. I'm not saying he's elite, dominant, whatever you want to call it. But a good pass rusher, right? So I'm taking Hayden Hansen, Florida Gators tight end. That is a very good blocking tight end, damn near 6'8", 265, 270 pounds. And I'm going, all right, Ruben Bain's on this side, Hayden's on this side. Ruben Bain's on that side, Hayden's on that side. And that's how I'm going to initially plan that attack, you know? I'm just going to say, we're going to double team the good edge rusher. Because that's what a lot of teams do basically every week, right? The teams do it all the time. We saw Florida do it a lot last year. They double teamed with Hayden Hansen. I'm doing that to Ruben Bain. So that should, in theory, negate the best pass rusher on Miami's team, right? In theory, you're negating their best pass rusher. Then you go to the other side, which I guess is going to be Tyler Barron, who, frankly, I don't care for as a passer. I don't think he's a good edge defender. And I feel like he's one of the few players where Florida Gators fans can talk about him, and you can't really say that they don't know what they're talking about with him, right? Because as a Florida Gators fan, you probably either are familiar with Tyler Barron and know what he's done against your team throughout his career, or you're not familiar with Tyler Barron despite facing him multiple years in a row. And I think that's a big distinction there, right? Because you've played him multiple times. He started for Tennessee against you, and you don't know who he is, then you probably go, well, then he couldn't have been good. And if you know who he is, then you know he hasn't been productive against Florida, right? He had 0 pressures the entire year last year. He had 4 pressures against Florida in 2022. In 2021, he had 2 pressures. He started all these games, by the way. And then in 2020, he didn't start, and he had 1 pressure. So you think, he's got what? That's 7 pressures in 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 4, 2, 1, and 0. So 7 pressures in 4 years, 7 pressures in, I don't know, 160 to 200 snaps. I didn't look at the snap count. I'm assuming it's 160 to 200 snaps. That's not good, right? And last year, the Florida Gators had maybe the worst offensive line I've ever seen for the program, and he did nothing. The only time he got in the backfield was a screen that ended up being a touchdown. Who cares? He's been ineffective every time he's played Florida. I'll put respect on his name when he earns it. Simple as that. Simeon Barrow on the interior. Is there any reason to fear him at all? Because I feel like throughout his career, he's not been a good pass rusher. He's not been a productive pass rusher. That's just never been what he does well, right? And correct me if you think I'm wrong. I'm not saying that he's a bad player. I'm saying I don't think he's a good pass rusher, right? C.J. Clark throughout his career has not been a productive pass rusher. Again, I'm not saying they're bad football players, but pass rushers, I don't think that you can go out there and honestly say they're good pass rushers. Maybe you could argue, good just interior defensive linemen, sure. Pass rushers? No. Also, you can try to negate the pass rush with screens to the perimeter. Draw play. They're schemed specifically to work around being outmatched with a pass rush. So while Miami is expected to have a really good pass rush this year, yeah, we could also talk about Francisco Mauigoa last year. Was incredibly productive as a blitzer. Not sure if that's going to carry over. That there tends to be a drop off in year 2 of a guy when he becomes a very talented blitzer with a new system. So we'll see what happens there. But I do feel like if he's going to be involved, he's someone that you have to keep an eye out on, obviously. And that's where you talk about the running backs in pass protection, who have been really bad for Florida in recent years. And Montrell Johnson, I understand they think, he's coming back to practice. Maybe he plays. I'll believe it when I see it. And by that, I mean, I'll believe he's going to play when I see him on the field. But until then, there's nobody proven behind him. Can't say they're good or bad. Same way we can talk about the secondary for Miami, and a lot of Miami fans are going to go, they're not bad, they're unproven. The same thing for the running backs and pass protection. We haven't seen them in there, so you can't really say. But the Florida Gators can still attack the Miami Hurricanes secondary on August 31st. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. August 31st is going to be a busy day. I mean, sure, you probably bought those all summer long, right? Probably. It was a scorcher this summer, but you're probably buying them again for August 31st. It's supposed to be a hot day down there. It usually is in Gainesville. And that 3:30 kickoff time going to have you right in the sun. So, yeah, especially double up on the sunscreen. Ibata is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. So you can earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, toys, all of your summer essentials. And you can make sure that you're trying to beat inflation no matter what you're purchasing. No matter what. Right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And now we've talked about the Miami Hurricanes secondary. We've talked about the immediate rebuttal for the secondary, which is, well, the pass rush is going to be good. But now it's actually attacking the secondary. Here's the thing. Miami last year played cover one was their primary coverage. They were actually one of the highest cover one users in the entire country last year, at the Power 4 level last year, Power 5 level last year. They called cover one a ton. It was more than a third of their coverage calls were cover one, which means, if you don't know cover one, man-to-man coverage. One safety over top in zone coverage, and then you have a couple other plays to play around with. They could be sitting in a zone underneath. They could be blitzing. They could be in a spy. You have a lot. They could double someone. You have a lot to work with. Could see it go around. Expect to see Miami do that again. They got a returning defensive coordinator. So let's say they play a lot of man-to-man coverage this year as well. I think Damari Brown, Miami Hurricanes corner, he's listed as 6'2". I think that he needs to be on either Elijah Badger or Khalil Jackson. And as far as the receivers I'm talking about today, it's Elijah Badger, Khalil Jackson, Trey Wilson, and Shimry DK. There's other guys that are going to shuffle in, but I'm talking about who's going to play the bulk of the snaps at receiver. Probably those four, right? So I think Damari Brown needs to be on Elijah Badger or Khalil Jackson. They are considerably taller than every other Miami corner. Mish Powell is listed as a corner. Mish Powell is listed as 6'1", but he's going to be in the slot. So that's kaput there, right? But Elijah Badger, Khalil Jackson, considerably bigger than any other DB, than any other corner that Miami has. So expect Damari Brown, the tallest guy, to be on there. But also, I would think that Darryl Porter Jr., who, again, I think he's an NFL corner, Darryl Porter Jr. will probably be on Trey Wilson whenever Trey Wilson is not in the slot. That's fair, right? Darryl Porter Jr. is their best corner. Trey Wilson, Florida's best receiver. Makes a lot of sense to go, hey, we're going to put our best player against your best player. Who would have thought that idea, right? So Darryl Porter Jr. probably going to be lined up against Trey Wilson a lot. I don't expect him to follow Trey into the slot. I do believe that Miami will say, hey, we're going to let Mish Powell handle that, especially if it's Trey Wilson. We're going to let our starting nickel player play the nickel. We're going to put faith in him there. So I think that when you put Trey Wilson in the slot, maybe you even go, you know what, Darryl Porter's good. Let's just ignore him. Let's put Trey Wilson in the slot and let's test Mish Powell. Can you cover a Trey Wilson underneath? Especially when they run that little pop pass. If it's man, Mish Powell should be covering that. Like he should be following that. And then someone has to come up and make the play, right? If it's Mish Powell has struggled throughout his entire career making tackles underneath, right? Make him prove he could do it. I'd also say, hey, Trey Wilson, you're going to work a lot over the middle. Because this is just me personally, I don't think Miami's linebackers are good in coverage. I think they're really good stopping the run. I think Francisco Mauigoa has been really productive as a blitzer. And he's been really good as a blitzer, not just productive. Like you look at the film, he times it out properly, does a good job blitzing off ball. But I don't think he's very good in coverage. I don't think any of the Miami linebackers are very good in coverage. Allow Trey Wilson to work underneath. The Arliss Boardingham, put him in the slot. If you put Arliss in the slot and Mish Powell's down there, then it's like, well, you've got a size advantage, right? Use it. And that will allow you to have Trey Wilson out wide with Darryl Porter Jr., which there's always an argument about, what to do with a top receiver versus a top DB. Do you bother putting your top receiver lined up against the top DB and risk him being taken out of the game plan? Or do you put him against the top DB because he's your guy that you think can beat that top DB? And so you go, yeah, we're going to put you out there, our guy versus your guy, and we're going to see who wins. And that's how you take the approach. Also, I will say for Florida, it wouldn't shock me if you saw Elijah Badger starting out wide on one side with Khalil Jackson out wide on the other side, because that means that Darryl Porter Jr., listed as 5'10", which means he's probably 5'9" and 3/8 of an inch, listed as 5'10", he'll be on one of them. Both considerably bigger than him. Damari Brown can be on one of them, but you're going to go, all right, well, we're going to put our bigger receivers out wide on your smaller DBs. Make them make plays. I'm not saying to just go, oh, yeah, you got a height advantage, throw it up to him. But I am saying that if you have a 50-50 ball, you have time to get the ball to him. Give him an opportunity every now and then. So I do think that the secondary is attackable. Again, cover one. By the way, also, Miami, Guidry calls a lot of cover one. Billy Napier throughout his career has had a lot of success against teams that call a lot of cover one. It's not a very frequently called coverage across college, but you look at guys that Florida's put up points against. I mean, Missouri last year was a game where everybody was like, oh, Florida's just so outmatched. Florida had a damn good game against, and South Carolina calls cover one a lot. Florida has had success at doing that. I'm just scanning the list quickly to see if I can see any other teams. But throughout his career, Florida's had some, or Billy Napier has had some pretty successful offenses against teams that call a lot of cover one. Just saying, Florida has had success. Maybe that's a good sign for the Gators going into this game against Miami. And as far as attacking them, it's again about more so about negate the pass rush, let your receivers make plays. You can do that. Again, Florida has the personnel to make that happen. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I will see you all next time.